Okay, I think I'll just go ahead and start a little bit with an introduction, and then when people come in, maybe they'll come into the juicy part. So if anyone has their microphone unmuted right now, if you just want to go ahead and mute it so we don't get any feedback loops. And then when we get to the conversation part, then we can unmute one at a time. Alrighty, so I actually know most of you on this screen right now, but I'm Carolina. And I'm really grateful that y'all are choosing to spend your Friday night right now coming here and to talk about this really important subject. After the last retreat that we just had, we had a lot of people questioning this subject, and so I thought it would be meaningful to have a conversation about it. And really, I'm here to just provoke a conversation and a contemplation. I don't have answers. And that's my intention here, is just to create a space so that we can talk about this. And all right, so I know that
Jeremy 91.
Hey, Mark, I'm gonna mute that one. Okay, and so I'm Carolina. I'm originally from Louisiana, and most of you know that I've been living in Peru for the last 7 years. My partner, Juliana Pasacruz, is from the Qero Nation, and so I've had this pretty unique opportunity to be integrated into a Qero family here in Peru. And I've been traveling around the world with my father-in-law for the past 7 years. We've been to India, we've been to South Korea, to the US, Guatemala. We receive people in retreats in Peru, and we typically join in on intertribal gatherings and things like this. And so some of the things that I really want to share today are really just some observations and contemplations from my own experience. It's not necessarily truth or fact, but just my own experience that I want to bring to the table. And I also want to highlight the fact that even though I've connected with various tribes from around the world, the experiences that I'm sharing right now come from one lineage. And so I don't want to make an assumption that this is the same for all lineages, because all lineages are very distinct. And I'm willingly putting myself in the hot seat right now too, because I know that I'm a Caucasian female talking about cultural appropriation or misappropriation. And I know that it's quite a hot subject and a touchy subject. So I'm putting myself in the hot seat willingly right now, because I think it's a really good topic to discover and to think about together so that we can walk in integrity. I think that the calling of our time right now is to reconnect to the planet, to regenerate the life force of this planet. And I think that we all know that indigenous tribes have a lot of templates. They have a lot of practices that can help this happen. But we want to make sure that we're doing that in a good way so that we're not creating cultural destruction at the same time, or not creating chaos by integrating practices maybe not in a way that they were meant to be integrated. So that's what this experience is for right now, and I really thank y'all for choosing to come here. And so I'm going to share my screen with you, and see if you can get it here. Can everybody see that? There we go. That's me and the family. And so here's what we're going to go over today. It's going to feel a little bit quick, but I think I'd rather give us more time to dialogue about it. So if you've got some questions around things, maybe take some notes and write that down so that when it comes to the portion of the dialogue, we can really dive in together. And we're going to first talk about what's the difference between, what's the difference between an offering and a ceremony. I think this is a really good distinction to make. And then I'm going to share with you the practice of chayando, which is an offering practice that my elders have asked us to pass forward. And we're going to go into what are the benefits of offerings, and then into the touchy subject of what is cultural misappropriation. And then we'll come into a community discussion. And during that discussion, I think it'd be nice if people kind of raise their hand on screen. I'll unmute you, and then give me a moment to respond to you before we hop into the next person. That way we're not like cross-firing in any way. And then at the end of this discussion, I'll share with you some opportunities for you to be able to learn with indigenous wisdom keepers in Peru if you want to continue this discussion and continue this practice. And if it turns out that there's a lot of conversation and more that we want to cover, we can always make another call for another day without all of the introduction pieces into it and have more time to keep diving into this. And you can send some of your questions and I can make a video about it. So there's definitely ways to keep the conversation going. Alrighty, so let's dive in. So for me, what I've been learning here in Peru, there's quite a difference between an offering and a ceremony. And so ceremony, in my opinion, is something that takes almost 10 years of training in most cases. My main maestro, my father-in-law, he sat in service by his maestro's side for 10 years in silence. And so I say that in silence because the way that the Qero share their transmission to one another is not like, let's write this down, you got to remember the prayer, let's record it. It's not this mind thing. It's sit in the same practice over and over and over and over and over and over and observe the minute details until you really get it and you can do it in your sleep. And so I want to give you an example here of why it's important to take that time. And it's different, the amount of time that each person would take to do this. It's very personalized. But for example, if you're going into surgery and the doctor tells you, oh, I'm just a grad student and he's about to operate on you, then would you allow that? I think sometimes it's really easy for us in this fast-paced life to kind of jump the gun, and we want this practice of service, we want this initiation into maestro or maestrohood to be quick. And so I think it's very important to finish the degree. And this is kind of more of a mystery school. It doesn't have a set like, oh, you have to finish this number of years and take this test. It's really about this practice in which you and your elder know that it's time for you to serve. And the guidelines in the ceremony are quite a bit more strict than ones in offerings. It's very important to know, here's my little quintus. Again, I'm chewing coca, not chewing chips or something. So it's very important to know what direction the quintu is going in. And actually, if you flip a quintu on accident or flip some of the items, you can actually create black magic. And so it's very important to know what type of ceremony that you're doing and what direction it's going in, because we can actually be creating chaos on accident. And typically in Peru, and not typically, every time, when we're doing a ceremony, we ask the coca first. And so a maestro actually knows many, many, many different types of ceremonies. They've got, just like an herbalist, they have many different types of medicines. You don't give the same medicine to every person. And so we do the coca reading before. Are we doing a ceremony of your birth star? Are we doing a ceremony to the apus? Are we doing a ceremony to the water? Are we doing a ceremony to bring good communication? So a maestro is someone who has mastered the many different varieties of bringing this specific medicine together for a very specific context. So it's a personalized intention. And so I actually want to talk about intention because I've seen this come up a lot in different subjects and communications. For me, in my opinion, intention isn't enough. There needs to be wisdom complementing the intention, because we can say that we can look all around the world and intention starts war. And it may be for the best intention for life and for the earth. And sometimes intention can lead down a heavy path. And so, again, I want to bring up this subject of, are you going to give the same medicine to everyone? And so that's where the intention of the ceremony comes into a maestro. They're going to read the coca and they're going to say, what's the very specific intention of this ceremony? Not just, am I putting my heart and faith into it, but which type of goal do we want to reach here to support this person back into health? And one of the things that I find too in ceremonies is coca is a really big deal. If we're doing a despacho, and I know it's not a plant that's easy to gather in another country, but coca is a huge part of a despacho. It's about, there's this whole interconnected relationship between people exchanging and you receiving information from the earth. And so it's kind of an interesting part to consider if we're doing despachos rather than offerings in another country, extracting the main medicine of that is a little bit complicated. And I know that the maestros do it in another country, but they're doing like every once in a while, you know, and they are the medicine of coca. They carry that in their spirit. They are that medicine. Another thing is when you're doing offerings is you're receiving permission from the land at least 3 times in private. And that is actually what a karpa is. It's going to a mountain in private. It's never done in a group in the Qero Nation. And you go in private with your maestro and they are blessing you. And it's not really the transmission coming from the maestro. It's a very specific permission being asked from the land, and the land is giving you a permission and a transmission to carry forward into the next stage of your life, and to do so in a way that you're not depleting your own life force, but you're being held with the energies of the land. And I just one other point that I want to share about ceremonies. Once a maestro or maestra is trained, making a living on ceremony is not the first leap. They're learning still, like once they've done their training for 5-10 years and they're knowing all the different types, they're trying these ceremonies with other people, and people are bestowing their trust in these people to support them in healing. And so money is not the primary interest there. It's something that comes over time through mastery. Oops. Okay, and so this is a picture of a ceremony. We're checking out the coca before we do a ceremony. This is what we do every time. All right, and so I want to go into offerings now. Offerings, on the other hand, are open human wisdom. This is something that all of us can do any day. I would suggest, just based on what my experience, is that it's really nice to cultivate personal offerings first, to really cultivate a listening and a communication with nature. It's like, if we grew up in a culture where we were distanced from nature for so long, it's like, how are we going to go to our mother and just say, hey, can I get that car that, that I've been wanting for my work? I'm doing this service work for you and I really think you should get a car, but we haven't even talked in 20 years. So first there's and I'm going to share a practice in a minute. First, there's this reconnecting with the mother, and reconnection takes time. And so there's making those personal offerings with you and the mother, you and the apus, and feeding them and learning to listen to how nature speaks and learning how to communicate your prayer in an effective way so that nature can hear us as well. Offerings have less restrictions. So I can make an offering with coca. I can make an offering with wine, with rum, with chocolate. I can make an offering with things that come from my heart. And I can make not only an offering by myself, I can do that in a community setting. So it might take on the form of looking like a despacho, but I might still use the word offering if I haven't been trained all the way down the line, the way that the cultural transmission shows us. And so even in a community offering, we're harnessing more energy. And so we still want to we want to have a good communication with nature before we're jumping into that. And I've heard a lot of my maestros say that they don't really recommend people using animal parts. It's not really advisable to, because you can't get llama fat, exchange it with some other type of animal fat, or because you don't have a condor feather, exchanging with another type of feather. Different animals hold different energies. And I made that mistake one time. I just put in a feather that I thought was beautiful, and some things went a little chaotic in my life afterwards. And so this comes from a space of not the best experience that I share that, and just my elders laughing at me in the face. So what I do want to share with you really quick is a practice called chayando. And if any of you have shared with us, this is a practice that we've shared with you before. And if this is your first time working with it, then I encourage you to try it. So I have my little chayando cups here. These are actually called Qeros. So the Qero Nation, this is a Qero. It's the cup of life. Here in my left hand, I have wine, which is red and sweet. And here in my right hand, I have cañazo, which is like rum. It's hard. And this is a way that we communicate to nature in the Andes. You can also bring sweets. I'm going to give you another little option here. You can also work with tea. That's what I do every morning. You can work with the things that you love. The practice that they actually share here in the Andes is with wine and cañazo, or it's actually originally with purple corn chicha and the alcoholic chicha. And so I'm just going to give a little example here. I'm going to say my prayer, and I'm not sure if it's going to come out in English or Spanish because it's usually Spanish. But the point here is what we're actually doing is bringing nature into balance and bringing ourselves into balance and strengthening our resolve, strengthening our fuerza, our life force, our causai. And I have the left hand for the feminine and the right hand is the masculine. So I'm just going to do a prayer and share with you. And good thing I'm outside so I can actually pour it. So, Pachamama, Ipamama, Apukontixi, Atexi, Pachaya, Chaicha, Huiracocha, that is kind, benevolent, and true, of the Creator and creatures of everything. Buenas noches. Apukuna, Pitusirai, Sawasirai, Apuwishkana, Inca, Warakana, Konzo, Wachana, Dalmania, Pilco, Santa Catalina, Huanca, Wilcanota, Hampui, Asistacio. Estrella Nacera, Louisiana, Rio Rojo, Apopino Cuna, Hampui. Pachamama, thank you very much for this night. Thank you for all of these people who are choosing to come here on a Friday night to learn, to discover together. Ask permission for all of the elements that we're utilizing today in our bodies, for the water, the earth, the wind, the fire, the little microorganisms, the little mycelium that are keeping all of this earth together, to the winged ones and to the four-leggeds and the two-leggeds, to the fished ones, to the ones who swim. Pachamama, we ask permission for all of those things that will be integrated into our life and our bodies today. Even those things synthetic, like the oil and the gas and the computer systems and the Wi-Fi systems, all of these things that come from your body, Pachamama, we ask permission to be able to do so. And we pray to be able to utilize these items in a way that serves the best regeneration of your life force. Utilize us as tools, utilize us as your antennas, utilize us as your eyes and hands to continue to do this work on this planet for you. Muchas gracias, Pachamama. Hayaya. And I have a computer in front of me, so I'm not going to like throw it on the wall. But what I would normally do, and see if you can see me here, I'm going to turn around, but I'm throwing the left one out towards the earth and the right one up in the air. Okay. Okay. So that's the practice of chayando. And there's many different ways to do offerings, and there's many different benefits to making offerings. And so one of the things that chayando can do is asking permission from the land. If I'm going into a new space, there are guardians, there are spirits that are holding that space and caring for that space. So we want to ask permission. May I enter? This is also a way to build up strength. So maybe sometimes we're kind of feeling a little off. We've got a lot of things going on in the city and the computer. This is a way to build up strength. So rather than asking for protection, it's just, let me get strong. It's also a way to co-create our goals with nature. We're feeding Pachamama. It's that practice of aini, reciprocity. We're not just asking, hey, please give me this thing. Please be well, feed yourself. Receive this. And my intention is to have an amazing webinar discussion. Please support me in that. This is also a way to listen deeply to nature. The more offerings that we do on our own, the more prayers that we make, the more that we cultivate that conversation with our mother, we understand how to listen to nature. We understand how to hear her responses. And that takes a little bit of training, because it's not the same way that humans speak to one another. There's a deep receptivity that comes from that. Offerings are also used for cleansing and clearing. It's kind of like that, building up the strength. It's like there's a lot of fields that we walk in and out of during the day. So we just want to cleanse and clear. And again, it's gratitude. It's aini. Thank you so much for life, for all of the things that I have in my life every day that maybe sometimes I'm not thinking about to say thank you. So let me just say thank you for those. And this is about context too. So making offerings and ceremonies actually came from the garden. Excuse me, little coca. Came from the garden. this is about growing food. It's like Pachamama's giving us food, so we're making offerings. We're saying, thank you. May you be abundant. May we not be just pulling your life force out. May we also be giving you life force. So this is about land stewardship. And this is a big point, actually, to know, because a lot of times if we're sharing these practices around the world, it's being extracted and taken out of its context of land. It's being seen as a particular spiritual practice. And like, we're like missing like 80% of the picture here of this relationship with the earth, not only spiritual, but the physical relationship of stewarding the earth. And we're also keeping nature's elements in balance. We're saying, may you be well. May you, may everything be in balance. And you heard the way that I shared the prayer. That's my own personal prayer. So I invite you to cultivate your prayer and your conversation in your language and what works for you. And offerings can be bigger too. I was asking Julian today, my partner, what he thought the difference of an offering and a prayer was. And he was saying, yeah, the offerings have that less restriction to it. And they can look like a despacho. They can be big. They can be in cotton. They could be in paper. Yet it doesn't have a ceremony is like, what exact protocol and ceremony am I doing? Whereas the offering is like, let's put our love and our intention and our prayers into this and say, thank you so much, Pachamama. And it has a little bit more fluidity to it. And so I really want to just point out here that we're talking about languaging too, because a lot of my elders, I've seen them in different retreats and they're pretty nervous. Even though they're very open, they're actually nervous to share too. They say, people are just going to write this down. They're going to write it down. They're going to sell it. And they're taking it out of context, and they get really uncomfortable when people get notebooks out. And I think that if we start paying attention to our languaging and start paying attention to some of those subtleties, that they're going to be a little bit more open to share. Alrighty, now the big subject, the slippery slope of cultural misappropriation. And I wanted to throw in the word mis there, because appropriation, like appropriar, is like to make your own. But misappropriation is making our own out of context, right? And so making it, and I think I've already shared that for a moment. It's like these ceremonies come from the land. They come from gardening. They come from farming. And if we're not doing those things, there's a pretty big piece like not applied there. It's not to say it's wrong. It's just to know the context from which these come so we can have a broader understanding of what we're working with. And I feel that often cultural misappropriation doesn't necessarily happen with intention. I think that it happens with the best of intentions, yet there's still kind of an extraction mindset, and that's kind of one of the sicknesses of our society these days, is that we want a pill. We want a fast track. We want a pill that fixes everything. We want to be able to do it now, and we're extracting resources from a culture or extracting resources from nature. And so how do we kind of step out of that extraction mindset and slow it down a bit? I've seen often in, Occidental countries selling, I feel that with good intentions, people want to step out of their cubicle jobs, the corporate jobs, the things that make them feel stressed, and want to get into something that feels very meaningful. Yet maybe doing it a little bit quickly and then jumping into the money piece a little bit quickly. Again, as I was sharing earlier, my elders have studied 10 years. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what we have to do, but I think we should understand a time frame at least. And people are stepping into selling it really prematurely, like just wanting to make that full life switch out of one thing into another. So I want to give you an example real quick of what I did. The first time that I went somewhere without Juan Gabriel, my maestro and father-in-law, I shared about prayer. So I didn't share despachos. I've been trained. I know how to do despachos. But I don't feel comfortable that if someone was like, hey, I have cancer, like that I would know what type of despacho to do for that. Or if they were like, hey, I'm about to break up with my partner, like, I don't know if I would be able to define which despacho goes for that. And I was aware of that. So rather than jumping into selling despachos, what I did is I did song healing and song baths. And that's something that's my gift, something I cultivated. And through that, I shared offering and prayer. And I asked permission. I said, is it okay if I share this? And he said, yeah, absolutely. This is wonderful. I think more people should know. And so just to give you like kind of a reference of like, maybe it doesn't have to be, if you are trying to make that switch in your life, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be this big leap. It can be like, let's learn and practice, and what can I do in the meantime that's still sharing and benefiting people, and not necessarily working with energy in a way that we can't handle. And again, sometimes I see people, it seems like trying to fit it into our own context. We want it quick, rather than patient mastery. And so, you know, our lives are fast, they're rapid, we've got a lot going on. And I've heard people say, well, you know, we're in a new era. These elders like took 10 years, but we got to speed things up now. And I'm not so sure personally if I agree with that. I think maybe a tiny bit, you know, quicker, but we're talking about maybe 7 years instead of like one, you know. I just think that if the cultures have been so resilient over so many centuries of really rough stuff, there's got to be something to it, you know. I can't imagine that just because we're in a quicker time, like we have to go against what has worked. And when we look at nature strategies that work continue. And so if this is really about our communication with nature, I think that we should check out which pieces of this strategy are working and really try to connect with that. And one last piece that I want to share is that one can misappropriate their own culture. And this is a little unfortunate, and this is part of the complex puzzle that I see happening. And I'm only going to speak in the context of the Qero, because that's the community I've been in. So I've seen a lot of people asking for karpais, for initiations, because that's what they heard that they're supposed to do. And I've seen a lot of maestros say yes, and I've seen some say no too. I've seen people do it in group settings, which is not something that I've ever seen in the actual community itself. And sometimes maestros say yes because it's part of Peruvian culture to say yes. They don't say no. You could be like, do you have a bathroom in your house? They're like, yes, because they don't like conflict in any way. Like saying no is just not part of this culture. So it's really good to understand some of these dynamics as we're fusing cultures, so that we can be responsible. One of the things too is in the subconscious of a maestro and a maestra, if someone in their community asks, will you train me to be a maestro or maestra? Will you like give me a karpai or initiation? They say yes, because they know very well that that young person knows what it means. They know that that young person knows that they're about to have maybe not the easiest life, that they're willingly taking on heavy energy and healing sickness in this world, in this earth, and in people. And so someone's got to be out of their right mind to ask them to become a maestro if they didn't know what it meant. And so I just want to invite a question here, that just a good understanding for us to know, where are we in this process, and are we ready yet to really take on ceremonies versus offerings? And again, sometimes money can play into this as well. And so I don't even think I have to go in and explain that one. Sometimes money can play into this. Sometimes people are selling their culture, and at home they're actually evangelical and they don't chew coca. And so just to be mindful of those instances there. Okay, let me go here. So I'll leave you on this beautiful photo of Peru, so you can imagine yourself here in the Andes with us. And then I want to go ahead and open up the floor now to have like a 25-minute discussion here about what you think and some of the things that I've shared, or any questions that you have. This is an open discussion. Again, maybe raise your hand. I can't actually see everyone at the same time. So yeah, if you just want to unmute yourself one at a time, maybe, because I can't actually see everyone now that I'm sharing my screen with you. And we will have a little discussion here. And just remember to kind of distill the essence of what you want to share, because there's a couple people here and we want everyone to have time. And then at the end of this, I really want to share with you some opportunities that you can have to go deeper and learn with Peruvian maestros in person. So remember, if you want to unmute yourself.
Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
Delaney here.
Hey there.
I wanted to say that if people want to raise their hand and might not be seen, down where it says participants, if you click on that, it has the name of everybody who's on, and there's a little button on the bottom right that says raise hand.
Okay.
So
Sure.
that might help you as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank
Great
you.
talk. That was a good share. That was
Gracias.
helpful.
Yes. Yeah, so anyone, go ahead if you have any questions to ask. You're welcome.
Okay, well, I have a question. So I remember hearing that another, not in the Qero Nation, but from Colombia, that some of the maestros from that area had been in California several years ago and said, we're in an area in Northern California, and said, this area really needs offerings and ceremony and connection, or there'll be a very big fire here. And it turned out to be where the campfire started this year. And they had said, you should be doing this in all of your apus. You should be making regular things. Mm-hmm. And in my area of Ojai, they came through here and were saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. You need to, because we had a very big fire here. So, I go hiking like every couple of days in the hills. And so it's a smart way to go in, just like before I even go up the trail to the mountain, to just take time at that time to ask for, essentially to greet the mountain and the apu and bring something small, like it could be a flower, it could be a piece of fruit for the animals, whatever, and leaving something as I start my walk.
I believe so. That's what we do. We first, right, it's kind of like when you get to the gateway of the mountain.
Right.
Then right there, we would stop, like be present for a moment and just ask permission. May I come into your space? I'm here with good intentions. I'm here to speak with you, to make offerings to you. And I just like make a little offering of something. Yes.
Yeah, because one of the reasons I don't like to walk up into the hills and I stay on the safe fire road is because it's rattlesnake season. So I suppose I could ask such a mama to keep her relatives off my path.
That's true. That's what we do too. Yeah, they always tell us not to be afraid. You make an offering, you build up the strength, you ask permission, and you just walk. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you.
Gracias. Orit, I see you've raised your hand. I unmuted you. Orit?
So yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little bit distant, but yes.
Okay, how about now?
I can hear you.
All right, so I have another aspect that I do, Delaney. I always have with me a little pouch with organic tobacco and white sage. So I do it twice actually when I hike at the trailhead. I ask permission. And then as I approach the mountain and I feel kind of like Caroline said, like a gateway to the mountain, I stop and I do that again. Mm-hmm. So that's a really easy way. And of course, water, because you always have drinking water with you, so you can pour a little. Mm-hmm. So it's a really easy way to always be prepared to express gratitude and ask permission.
Gracias.
Yeah. Mm. And Caroline, since I have the floor, mm-hmm. I just wanted to make a clarification about dispatches. What we have been doing until now, which we are shifting, we never taught to do personal healing dispatches, ever. We never did them ourselves, ever. What we have been teaching, and we'll no longer do that, but what we offer is community dispatches. Mm-hmm. And that's for the equinoxes and solstices and all those things. And those we will continue doing, but we will not call them dispatches. We will call them offerings.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really honorable thing to do, and I'm happy that that's something that you gathered from our time together here, even though it was kind of subtle.
Yeah.
I think the languaging is so important, and I think it shows humbleness too, that you're our maestros, and we want to learn these ways, and we're going to take baby steps, and we still want to make offerings to the earth, and I think offerings is a good way to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, is doing it while honoring the tradition and honoring the Pacos who taught us the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that.
Gracias.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to be like a rapid fire conversation tonight. Yeah, Rosemary, I'll get you there. Okay, you're unmuted. Okay, I think it's not unmuted actually. Can you unmute yourself? Awesome.
I wanted to say thank you, Caroline, for sharing this and sharing your Friday night, sharing your perspective and your wisdom and all the reminders. I just feel a lot of gratitude, and I just want to thank you for doing this. I really appreciated the reminders about growing food and about how important it is to be in harmony with nature and all the ways that that can show up. And it's just very exciting to me to be sitting with you on a Friday night and to be having this conversation. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Gracias. Hey, Picus and cheese. Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's definitely something that I feel is a topic that comes up often, and I just wanted to share some of the things that I've been witnessing. And yeah, the thing about food, wow, I mean, that's like 80% of this. The food is like, these ceremonies came from a relationship with the land in a very extreme environment where if you don't do these ceremonies, the mountain takes you out by lightning. Or
Right.
the river overflows while you're on the bridge and just boom. And so this came from a space of nurture. How can we be kind and how can we feed? And if these ceremonies can feed a mountain and evict having lightning strikes, then they're obviously pretty powerful. And so even though they seem subtle, they're very strong. And yeah, I mean, the ceremonies come from Pachamama, let me give you this offering so that we have a good harvest this year. And that's a pretty big part that I think would be very good for us to start tuning into. So thanks for bringing that portion up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted to add, Caroline, that the part of white culture that says, oh, that's superstition, now we know from quantum field and quantum science explorations from the scientific community that it really is all one. And I mean, you're sort of like either you're resonating as a wave or you're a particle, but wave and particle are just changing all the time. So I really recognized in being with the Pacos and you this summer that we're learning now by the proof, so to speak, that we need what the Pacos and the people have always known, which is that the more you're feeding a positive energetic, the more that is the field you are in the field you're living in. So I think it's really wonderful to be around at a time where the science and the spirit are meeting and reinforcing one another in a way that we haven't seen for how many hundreds of years. So it's very cool.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it just helps different minds and different aspects of humanity to connect in different ways. I think that's why there's so many religions around the world too, and different ways to connect with spirit. There's options. It's like, oh, that option didn't work for you. Here's this other option for you to connect to. And it's all that same wisdom. There's many paths, but one spirit. And so that scientific way is also valid. And yeah, I think it's really important. Even the scientists learn step by step to be a trained scientist to get to there, right? And so
Right.
it's like, just because the native people have not like made this school prototype, a Western prototype, it's really good to understand and respect their prototype. So thank you for sharing that. Don't be afraid to speak your mind. It's a good dialogue.
Hi, Carolina. This is Erin. Unfortunately, and everyone else, hello, my video is not working. Thank you so much for hosting this and bringing your beautiful words to us all. And I have a question about, it's really lovely to spend time in Peru with these teachings and traditions and the maestros and maestras, and how do folks like me, I have this desire to keep connecting to that while I'm living my life here in the States. And I mean, yeah, just what do you recommend, or how can we stay connected here in our office job cubicles while yearning for that connection?
Thanks for asking that. And I'm not sure if you were on at the beginning, but I shared that practice of chayando. So that's also one of those ways to stay connected. And I know when I tell people I live in Peru, they're like, oh my God, so mystical and magical. I'm literally like in my office almost all day, like American, like in another country. And so this is one of those practices that I used to set up this space just now. I had some incense, some sage, because it calms me down the most. And then I made a prayer. Before I got on the call with you, I made a prayer with the wine and the rum, and I called Pachamama into this space, and I waited for her response. For me, I feel her through the wind. She comes in, like, might blow my paper off, or like send a hummingbird, and so yeah, I just made that prayer and set my intention for coming into this space, that this was for me to create a dialogue today, not to know everything or to come off that way. And so I do the same thing for meetings. I do the same thing on a stage if we're in that space. So yeah, these offerings, and like Orit was sharing, so you can share tobacco and sage, you can burn something like sage, you can make the liquid offerings. In the morning, I actually do tea. I sit with a little teacup like every day, and I do tea. You can share coca, you can share something sweet. You'll start to cultivate that conversation yourself. And you can do it in any context. And honestly, like, nobody ever knows what I'm doing. I could be in a supermarket. I'm serious. I've done this before. I'm in a supermarket. I'm like, Pachamama. So I'm not like, brah, with the whole thing, but I take my finger and I'm like this, and just like connect in it. And there's a difference between like doing the ritual and like sinking into that space and feeling what the energy that you're moving, right? And so the practices that we're sharing right now is that. And if you're like craving for ceremony, pray for that. Like, Pachamama, like, I really need something like stronger and more meaningful in my life right now. And then, hey, someone might invite you to a Temazcal, like a sweat lodge, or maybe a maestro or maestra comes into town, and you actually get drift of that. And so those are some of the ways that nature might respond to us when we're making those personal offerings. And then you can also come to Peru whenever you want. And I'll share that in a minute too. But thank you, Erin, for asking that question. I think the short answer to that is keep praying and keep making offerings, especially on the days that you don't feel like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Hi, Caroline.
Hola.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, just following up from what Erlene asked, I'm just wondering, so she mentioned there's a folks who are stuck at our jobs or in the cubicle and stuff like that. And do you have such opportunities apart from, so let's say we come to Peru maybe the first time and then we'll want to continue even here in the US. So do you host such calls on a regular basis where you can share more and just create this kind of space? Do you do this regularly?
I do not. This is my first one. But I would be happy to, if that's the question. If there was like a group that's sharing and it was meaningful for your time, I would be happy to come up with some sort of schedule where maybe we do it once a month, and we can get on and have conversations like these and share practices. And some of the things that I do though is I share like maybe at least almost 3 videos a week, and there's some of the contemplations and reflections that I'm having as I'm doing these practices and as I'm sitting with elders. And so there's also ways that you can like send me a question and I can make a video about it, or like have a conversation with me and an elder and we can share. So there's many different ways that we can do that. And we also typically come to the US once a year. And so if you're on the mailing list, then you'll get a information that we're going to be coming to the US. And that would be another space that you can meet us in. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Gracias. I think I saw Orit raise your hand.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that 2 things. First of all, there are groups and tribes in many places. So Aaron and Captain, wherever you're located, I'll be happy to try to find something in your area. If you're not in my area, I'm in Southern California. And the other thing is, one of my plans for maybe even this year, but definitely 2020, is to offer free kind of shamanic journeys or circles for people to join, and it will be free, at least at the beginning. So if you want to connect with me, I'll be happy to invite you to those.
Gracias.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good to know that there's different options around, and yeah, so maybe we can have some sort of follow-up email or something after this. So if people want, I'm happy to do like maybe a once a month call, and we can also know what other people are offering in the community that are there. And before I get into Peru stuff, does anyone who hasn't spoken have anything that they want to share or ask? Don't feel timid. JT, I see ya. You're unmuted. No, you're not. Can you unmute yourself?
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, good evening to everyone on the call. Carolina, thanks again for inviting us to this conversation and discussing the important subject. One question I have is, suppose we encounter a well-intended stranger or group of strangers in our environment, and we just happen to notice that they're demonstrating cultural appropriation, misappropriation. What would your recommendations be on how to generally approach that? Would you consider attempting to intervene, or would you go about it as if you didn't witness it?
Attack! I'm just kidding. Don't do that. So I think it would depend on the context and if I felt that anyone was in jeopardy. And it's, sometimes hard to cultivate that energy, but I like cultivate that jaguar energy. And if I feel that it's a moment where it's a good idea to speak to someone, I would probably most likely pull them aside first rather than do it like in a shaming way. And I might just ask them questions like, do you feel this is an integrity? Do you feel that you're coming from the right space in this? Do you feel that you've had permission? Maybe just ask them questions for personal reflection rather than a shaming. And, I've actually come across, I live in Peru, and there's a lot of that going on in PSAC. And I honestly, like a lot of times, just choose to look the other way And not as like, I'm forgetting about this, but just choosing my battles. And then I might make a video about what I saw that day. And I might tag that person or something so hopefully they'll see that video. And they can decide if it's a video for them or not, but it's a common subject that I see. So maybe I'll like find a different way to voice that and ask and bring people into inquiry. And again, not from a shaming, but like just posing questions. And I do that often for the videos that I create. It's something that I'm observing that doesn't feel in alignment. And then, I mean, again, the best way is that inner work. When we're standing in a place of integrity and people see that, they're like, this is a little different. Like, I'd like to know more. And they're attracted to that. And you're going to attract your crew. And one more thing to share about that. If you found that someone was doing something not in integrity, I might speak to the person that I thought was getting affected. I might ask, what qualities do you see in this person that you respect and admire? Know that you're going to be taking those on in the ceremony if you're doing ceremony with them. And so just inviting people into an inquiry. Thanks for asking that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody over? I think I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit about some opportunities that are coming up. And again, if you feel that you haven't shared yet and you want to just write me a question, I'm happy to make a video about that. And we can also, if any of you are interested to start forming a monthly call, I'm really happy to do that too. Monthly or, whatever opportunity schedule y'all love. So, all right. We have year round, we have about 4 retreats a year. And this is an opportunity for us to pass on that wisdom and time for people to really be able to connect with elders one-on-one. This is a space where we have more time together to chew coca too, which is a huge deal in this lineage. We get to sit and chew coca together, get to learn and grow and ask these questions in a really deep level and really see how it applies to our life. And so I'm really excited to announce our Ecology of Kinship Retreat. This is a new program that we've never offered before. It's coming up soon, so for anyone that's spontaneous, it's September 10th to the 18th. And we have an early late bird that ends tomorrow. And for anyone that's on this call, I'm happy to extend that for you, just for being on the call. Like there's no like cutoff date for you. And so yeah, in this retreat, I'm really excited about it because this is the first time that we're really going to share a very solid connection between gardening and farming and the land and ceremony. So we feed Pachamama and her spirit through ceremony, and we feed Pachamama physically through farming and gardening, or the decisions that we make as a consumer with our food, right? And so this is a huge connection, and this is the first time that we're really going to highlight that connection. And we have some amazing a Quechua ecologist. He's going to be sharing with us Andean wild crafting. We're going to make medicines. We're going to learn about the Andean foods, and of course, we're eating all organic food together, and it's a big part of this culture. We're going on the land, and it's going to be the first group that does ceremony on the land because we're getting our big teepee up. And really, this is just an opportunity for self-exploration and transformation, an opportunity to connect to Peru and the indigenous culture in a really solid way. And a space to grow together. And this is an opportunity for me to share some of those deeper things that I've been noticing with this culture, in hopes that you become self-sufficient in prayer and offerings and in connection to that land, and maintain that connection no matter where you are. Even if you're on the computer or in the city, that you always feel that presence of nature and always hear her intelligence flowing through you, because we're part of nature. So that's the Ecology of Kinship. And for those that are not spontaneous and want a little bit more time to know about opportunities, we have another retreat coming up over New Year's. And this is actually the connection between art and ceremony. So we're going to be learning the weaving practice and learning that sacred technique of connecting with nature through art, as well as the prayer and the offerings. And then in spring 2020, we are going to offer another program, and that will be announced online very soon. And so you can go to revivolution.net. Don't forget the E in the middle of Revivolution. A lot of people do. Revivolution.net. And then, or you can write to me anytime at cputnam@revivolution.net. And so I'm just gonna leave you with a couple photos here that I found today. Yeah, this is our maestros. They're all starting to work together, which is, we just talked about that, Rosemary, again, like bridging the maestros together here. And yeah, we're here in ceremony, so this is kind of one of those experiences. This is JT. Look at you. Permiso to use your photo. So yeah, this is just that experience of really connecting with maestros one-on-one and getting those blessings and getting those transmissions, not only from the maestros, but from the mountains, from the landscape that these come from. Really important, if you can, in your lifetime, like come and get that transmission from the space where they came from. And here's an important piece, as we were speaking about, that opportunity to really connect and share coca. This is huge. There's so much communication and wisdom that's being passed through that experience and connection. And then got another photo for you here. And this is us in ceremony. This is one of the biggest ceremonies that we've done actually in Peru right before our concert. So they're usually a lot more intimate, but this is just kind of sharing that energy in that space of what we're in. We're in that space of deep connection. Everyone's really like not on the phone. We're like deeply connected. It's a really safe space to be able to share what's going on in our life and see how ceremony and prayer and deep connection to the planet can actually be the medicine that we've been looking for. And it's here all along. We're just reconnecting as a species, as a brother, as a sister, as a mother, connecting as daughters and brothers and sons of the earth. And so just reconnecting to our mother again. And there's so many different methods and ways to do that. And that's what we are honored to do and to share. So thank you for all spending your Friday night with us. I really appreciate it. You're all welcome to unmute if you want to say hi.
Caroline, can you hear me?
Yes?
Can you share the retreat page?
Yes, like here on the link here.
Oh, okay.
You mean here on in the chat?
I don't know, like how can we see that?
Mm-hmm.
How do we find that?
Let me go to it real quick. So you can go to, can y'all still see my screen? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I just got a weird error message. That's not fun. Oh no.
Well, I can see what is cultural misappropriation. I can see your slideshow.
Oh, you don't see what I'm seeing then. That's good. I'm seeing an error message on my website that's like, this is not opening. Okay, I got it. All right, so I'm going to put the link here for the upcoming retreat. And again, there's an early bird special till tomorrow. Oops, hold on. I'm going to send it to everybody. There we go. Can everyone see that in the chat? I just sent you the link. And yeah, you're welcome to invite more friends that you think would benefit from these teachings. I mean, really, I feel that the call of our time right now is reconnect to the earth. And there's so many things in our life. There's time, there's work, there's money, there's all of these things that are stresses. And this is a sickness of our society, that there's never going to be more. And that we don't ever put the time in for ourselves and refill our cup. And that we keep putting it off. And for me, what I've realized is actually when I take that time, even if it made no logical sense, like I came to Peru with like less than $1,000 in my pocket and ended up staying. And so it helped me to catapult into my life purpose, and helped, for me, it defined my work and defined the way that I made money and defined the relationships that I made. And so actually when we take the time to refill that cup, then we are being supported in all of those areas. And that is the way that nature wants to work with us, is this collaboration. And that's where those offerings and prayers come from. We're co-creating with life. And so all of those fears that we have start to dissipate, because we start to have that practice and that experience, and we have community to work through that with, and to be really vulnerable with, and to lift ourselves up together, and to really step up to the call of our time, which is to regenerate the earth. And so I know there's many ways that you can do that, and this is one of those ways. And I hope to stay in connection with y'all, and I thank you again for coming. I'm going to stop sharing my screen really quick so that I can see your lovely faces. Stop share. Okay, hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. And I think I'll sit with this, but maybe I'll send you a follow-up email or something and just see how everyone wants to stay connected. And you feel free to share this forward too. Feel free to share this. This is not my own or your own. This is for people to know and to discover and have those discussions in your own community and in your own work. See how it applies to you and find the practices that work for you to stay in connection with nature. And I really hope to see you in Peru and so we can chew coca together.
Yeah. And we want to come back in June 2020, so don't book yourself out.
I already got you. I'm already unbooked.
Good.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye, Delaney.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, JT. Talk to you on Sunday.
Yes.